You are probably going to want to turn on your lights for this one. I have some really scary tales to share with you today. Many of these are first-hand accounts of the creepy things folks have experienced while out hiking. Wild animals, ghostly sounds, creepy cars. It's all here. I'm your host, James, and these are the top 10 dark discoveries made by hikers. And we're kicking off the list with the bear. I wanted to start off with this one because it's actually a story a buddy of mine told me from when he used to work as a camp counselor. So he would take kids out on these like long treks through the woods on these canoe trips. And it'd be about like 2 weeks long, some of them. And one day they were out, they'd found a camping spot and they put up their tents and everything for the night. They'd had a fire, everyone went to bed, the counselors were in their tents, and then they heard a sound which sounded like a large animal stalking around in the woods kind of around their campsite. They kind of whispered to each other like, what should we do? We have all these campers here with us, they obviously have to protect them. They got out of their tents and they decided to shoot off a flare. They had some flares specifically for bear encounters. And at this point, they pretty much know it's a bear. Like they hear it growling and it's like, yeah, it's pretty clear what this is. They fire the flare off in the direction where they're hearing this growling. And it's nighttime now, so they can't really see anything. But as the flare starts shooting through the woods, it just illuminates this big like black bear, like just kind of illuminated through the flare, at which point it luckily turns around and runs into the forest. But yeah, suffice to say, they're pretty shook after that. Like, what would they have done if the bear didn't decide to run away? Yeah, freaky stuff. All right, next up we have a tale I'm going to call the Vanishing Man. This story was posted to Reddit by user Throwaway Friend, and I gotta say, if this happened to me, I'd be shaken up for a long time. I definitely felt a chill up my spine reading this one, so here it goes. Back in 2015, I was on a hiking trail in Arizona. I have hiked a lot in worse terrains in Europe, so I wasn't too worried about doing it alone. It was almost getting dark, and I was at an eerily deserted stretch for what felt like hours now. Suddenly, I heard a kind of music. As I kept going, I realized it was someone whistling. It gave me the creeps, but the idea of company relieved me a bit, too. Soon enough, I saw a man in front of me walking the same direction. He was wearing a t-shirt and pants, which was surprisingly inadequate, especially for the impending night. I passed him by. He was the one whistling, indeed. Turned to say the customary greetings. He looked up, deadpan, and without a word, turned back down towards the ground and kept whistling. He was walking slowly in an almost trance-like manner. I quickly averted my gaze forward, and almost abruptly, the whistling stopped. I turned back to see what had happened, and there was absolutely no one on the trail. Zilch. Didn't even feel like anyone had been there. At our number 8 spot, we have the skeleton. The story was posted to Reddit by WhaleHeart0129. When they were 11, they went camping with their mom, her boyfriend, and their little brother outside of Las Vegas, in the middle of the desert. One morning, the group decided to go arrowhead hunting. During their hike, they stumbled on a full human skeleton laid out on a blanket, tucked under a bush. The person appeared as if they had fallen asleep and never woken up. The boyfriend knelt down, offering a prayer over the remains, and then they all walked back to the campsite in complete silence, each person just shocked by what they'd seen. They promptly contacted the ranger, and the boyfriend later got into a helicopter to guide them to the location of the remains. Turned out to be a young man who had been missing for almost a year. Next up on the list, we have a story shared by Reddit user Particular Knight 392, who wrote about an odd creature they came face to face with while hiking. So in early 2019, they went hiking with a friend. After walking for at least 30 minutes, they heard a rustling in a bush a few feet in front of them, and then a deer emerged, but something about it seemed kinda off. The creature lacked a tail, its ears were unusually small, almost invisible. Its eyes were abnormally large, giving it an almost goat-like appearance. The deer, or whatever this thing was, just stood still, fixated on the hikers. As it began to approach, they noticed something was off about its eyes, too. They weren't the usual brown, but a dark, piercing red. Their friend, who was visibly shaken, remained still beside them. When the deer ventured too close for comfort, the friend grabbed their arm and they both ran, not daring to look behind them. Number 6, lights. The Trek is this website dedicated to all things hiking. When readers were asked to share some of their creepiest stories while hiking, Sarah Legg posted this one. It was a long, rainy and cold night. Having just settled into her tent for the night with her canine companion, she was aware of being only a mile from a lengthy dirt road. Any sounds or lights were quickly dismissed as coming from said road. Lying in the tent, she began to hear unsettling noises resembling raindrops on a raincoat, as if someone were moving around the tent. Less than 5 minutes later, a flash of light caught Sarah's attention. She thought maybe another camper had arrived, but she hadn't seen anyone. The lights formed a horizontal pattern around the tent, blinking from left to right as if someone was circling the tent. She tried to tell herself it was just car lights, but then things took an unexpected turn. The lights appeared above the tent, maintaining a perfect formation. Sarah, realizing that the lights couldn't be explained by nearby cars or reflections, started to get really unsettled. She covered her face with her sleeping bag, praying that whatever it was wouldn't pose any harm. She never found out what those lights were. Next up, we have another story shared by a different commenter, Jerry DeJong, on the same Trek site. So some years back, Jerry had been out hiking near Mount Shasta with a buddy. They had set up a camp for the night, cowboy camping by a crackling fire, enjoying cold beers and cooking up a pair of steaks. Then, out of the blue, Jerry's friend took a log and started whacking it against a tree. According to him, it was how Bigfoot communicates. Jerry encouraged him to give it another shot. He knocked at the tree again, and sure enough, a few minutes later, 4 distinct knocks echoed in the distance, loud enough to be something hefty smacking against a tree. Minutes crawled by, and it happened again. Both of them could sense something sizable moving in the forest. 4 knocks, followed by 2, roughly 100 yards away. Next thing they knew, they were packing up camp in record time as the sounds of something large moved in the forest only 20 to 30 yards away. Jerry had heard large animals in the woods before, grizzly bears, elk, moose, but whatever this thing was, it sounded nothing like any of those. And at number 4, we have the banana spider. This is a tale shared with us on Reddit by user Kamala2024. More of an icky discovery than a dark one, but if you have a fear of creepy crawlies, this story is going to make you cringe. So here's the story. Hiking early morning in Hawaii, and my stomach notifies me that it's time to go number 2. I find a porta potty near the trailhead and jump in to do my business. Once complete, I flip my headlamp on to find the toilet paper, but instead find a huge 5 inches in diameter banana spider hanging out in the corner of the porta potty. Trying not to spook it, I slowly reached for the 1-ply. As I do, my headlamp shines on this monster and it proceeds to freak the F out. It runs in circles for a bit, both of us losing our minds at this point, and ends up between my legs inside of my underwear. I'm at a complete loss of what to do, but eventually begin wiggling back and forth in an attempt to get this spider to remove itself. That didn't work at all. Instead of exiting the premises, this mother effer runs up my leg. This is the point where I just give up and storm out of the porta potty, yelling and screaming. Pants around my ankles. No clue what happened to the spider, but it disappeared in a flash, just like my dignity. Our next story is called The Lost Hiker. It was shared by a man named Jeff Fissel. One weekend, Jeff headed down to Wilson's Creek Wilderness for a camping trip with a buddy. As the night settled in, Jeff woke up to find his tent mate crouched over him brandishing a knife. Jeff was obviously pretty petrified, thinking his friend was about to knife him, but trying to keep his cool, he asked, hey man, what's going on? His friend whispered, listen, and after what felt like an eternity, a spine-chilling call echoed through the wilderness. Jeff sprang up and grabbed his own knife. The eerie voice drew closer. The unsettling voice lingered nearby, then slowly moved away, still emanating eerie sounds. The next morning, Jeff and his buddy struggled to make sense of the strange encounter. Packed up, and on the trail, they stumbled on an orange ribbon with a message. It was for a lost day hiker who hadn't returned the previous day. suspected to be hungry, cold, and wandering the area all night. That must have been the man making the noises the night before. They realized they likely ignored a lost hiker. The problem was he never really asked for help, only making ghostly moans. Number 2, that's not Kevin. This one was shared by Cookies Choco, whose friends came face to face with something in the woods that they thought was their friend. The story goes as follows. I was in the woods with 3 friends at night. A friend's house was nearby, and I was getting hungry, so I went inside to find some food. Another friend came inside with me. 2 friends were still outside. Later on, one of the 2 who were outside comes in and sees the indoor friend on the couch next to me. They panic and immediately run back outside. I poke my head out the door asking what's going on, only to hear them yell as loudly as they can, "That's not Kevin!" Everyone comes inside and calms down a bit, and the story comes out. They thought the friend who was indoors with me, Kevin, had been outside with them this entire time. Why? Because in the darkness of the woods, they saw a silhouette about the same height walking alongside them silently. And then at some point it ran away and they were chasing it thinking Kevin was running off for some reason. The reason my friend yelled, "That's not Kevin," was to stop the last outdoor friend from chasing whoever was out deeper into the woods. We still have no idea what that was or why they didn't ever speak. Finally, we have what I'm going to call the tale of the happy truck. This is a first-hand account shared to Reddit by Dying Lion. If this story is true, it's up there with some of the eeriest stories I've seen on Reddit. They describe the creepiest experience they had while hiking, not being with any wild animal, but with a little black pickup truck with rainbow and unicorn stickers. They were out walking their dog when they encountered the vehicle. It was blasting bubblegum pop music and smelled like cotton candy when it rolled by. First time it passed, it took a weird swerve toward them like it was aiming to hit. They quickly jumped out of the way, no big deal. Figured the driver may have got spooked seeing someone out at night with the reflective gear, but then the truck circled back and started driving right for them. This time, they were ready, snatched up their dog and jumped into a ditch. The car just missed them. Over the noise of the engine, there was this eerie, high-pitched maniacal laughter, sounding like it was coming from a little girl. The tiny truck pulled the same stunt for a 3rd time, but by then they ducked into a neighbor's shrubbery. From the hiding spot, they watched the little truck slowly cruise down the road, the creepy giggles echoing as it passed. Luckily, it kept on going, never to be seen again. With all that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.